Entering a room full of artworks by Richard Ciccimarra is an emotionally wrenching experience. The artist's complexity and pain is palpable and inescapable. These paintings are the tortured distillations of a progressive psychological breakdown that led to the artist's suicide in 1973. This program is an introduction to the artist Richard Ciccimarra and his work. Ciccimarra was born in Vienna in 1924 and came to the west coast of Canada in the early 1950s. He was an artist for less than 20 years. This untitled painting from the late 1950s depicts the artist and his wife as blacks. It is a pivotal work because from this point on, Ciccimarra's art became increasingly autobiographical as he wrestled with events in his life and the pain and torment inside himself.
He was a very sad person, clearly, and after a couple of drinks, like most of us, we tend to sort of let our hair down, and Ricky would let on in various ways of the kind of deep-rooted sadness that was that big devil or little devil that was way down deep inside him.
Ciccimarra's important work is readily identifiable from the beginning to the end. He was quoted as saying, "All my figures are brooding. At first, they had features. Now, they have no features." By the late 1960s, his figures are ghostly shadows, drifting, faceless beings waiting for death.
The figures in many of his works must be him and one other, or him and others. And that's really, opening up a lot of your own wounds to other people, and that must be was very hard for him. But seriousness, you never doubted that with him. I mean, as much as he might dismiss them at the time or try to get away from them in various ways, he was an extremely serious artist, yeah.
The unrelenting, painful progression of Ciccimarra's life and art belie a happier start. Following World War II, he and his first wife sailed the West Indies for 3 years. Upon his arrival on the West Coast in 1952, he painted this poignant, surreal painting, which marks the beginning of his commitment as a serious visual artist. From 1956 to 1958, he executed the West Indies series, a collection of wonderful paintings with little foreshadowing of the preoccupations to come. Laughing Woman, for example, is a delightful observation of unbridled joy and enthusiasm for life.
He looked with intensity, too, and that was one of his great qualities, really. Most people take a casual look, but Ricky really looked. He would just start, and it would be natural to him, and to vary the shades just so little, and it would just come out just like a drop, just marvelous. I never saw anybody work with ease like that. And relaxation. He'd be utterly relaxed.
Throughout his life, Ciccimarra found relief from his dark side in the solace of nature. These meticulously realistic flower paintings, for example, which he called his finger exercises, provided him a quick source of income besides honing his prodigious artistic skills. His skills as a fly fisherman were equally prodigious, indeed legendary. Ciccimarra was internationally renowned for his fishing abilities and often guided less skilled but affluent anglers looking for steelhead on the Cowichan River. The occasional relief from his demons notwithstanding, there was an inevitability about Ciccimarra's psychological despair, and in the final years, many recall that he would threaten to shoot himself with the revolver he kept under his pillow.
Well, I cared about him, you know, he was a great friend. And so I took food to him quite often, but then I'd find, you know, I'd go 2 weeks later that it was still sitting there. And I think I told you about that. I finally stopped taking food that I cooked for him because I'm not going to waste my time either. And so I told you, I think, one time that I just picked up a chicken off out of the Safeway, one of these on the spit. And I thought, well, that's food anyway, so that's all time I've got for it. But when I went to see him 2 weeks later, taking Bob with me because I was worried because I knew he had a gun under his bed, he said he had, and I had to drag Bob. but there the chicken was sitting there. It was just like a sort of shriveled up walnut. He'd never touched it, and I think Bob counted, well, I shouldn't say how many bottles, empty vodka bottles.
While in the hospital, recovering from a debilitating operation just 18 months before his suicide, he wrote a poem comprised of one question: how soon might we be free of care? Ciccimarra's last important works were rice paper collage on heavy, solid pieces of wood. It is here that we see the magnitude of the artist's creative power and compelling psychological insight. We see here a heroic effort of will in facing the essentials of the human condition with unflinching gaze. Ciccimarra shows us the whole of humanity like cascading tears falling into the nothingness of a bottomless abyss. Ciccimarra's legacy is a body of highly resolved work that is at once disturbing and cathartic. Such artists who confront our subconscious fears provide us with telling insight into our own and our collective mortality.